Most people are afraid of what's outside, the dark, the unknown, the things you know are there but you just can't see. But the worst stories don't start outside. They start at home, with a door that should be locked but isn't, a voice that sounds familiar, or a feeling that you're just not alone. This is The Static Hour, a late-night broadcast of strange and unsettling stories from the darkest corners of the internet. I'm Bree, and we are officially on the air. Welcome in, guys. As you know, if you've been here before, I am Bree, and really what we do here is tell spooky stories. And we snuggle up with our cozy blankets and listen and get creeped out and then go to bed right after. So it's great. I'm so thankful that y'all are here. If this is your first time, welcome in. And if this is your third time, because this is episode 3, I'm so glad you're back. So the question I have for you tonight, before we really jump into the stories, is this. If you hear a strange noise in your house, are you the type of person to go and investigate? Do you hide under the covers and pretend nothing's wrong? Or do you call your big scary dad or brother or husband? What do you do when you hear something that shouldn't be in your house? We own a house, and the only other people who have lived in our house before was an old lady, and she lived here ever since it was built in the 70s, and then she died. And I did not ask questions on if she passed away in the house or not, because that's not something that I felt like I needed to know. But I do always get the sensation of like, you just see stuff in the corner of your eye and you're like, okay. You know what I'm saying? When we first moved in, I got locked in our bathroom, and it was just weird, especially because we had just put new doors on, or new like doorknobs, and it shouldn't have happened. Other than that, that's the really only spooky, unexplained thing that has happened to me while we've been here. If we have a ghost who lives here, she's very calm and very quiet, and she really likes us, I think. But you never know. So let's dive into these stories and see what's going on. This first story is from user Mars1317, and the subreddit is True Scary Stories. And it was posted 5 years ago, so this is an oldie. The original post is called Home Alone with My Old Dog. And I will say, trigger warning, this does talk about pet loss in the end, but it's a good boy story. Although it doesn't seem like it, this happened quite a while back, probably over 10 years ago. I was in the later years of high school and was home alone. My parents were at a wedding that required them to stay at a hotel, and my brother worked the night shift. At that time, my family lived in a very well-known East Coast city in a blue-collar neighborhood that was starting to take a nosedive. As a teenager, I was a bit of a loner. I wasn't a nerd or anything. I was a big dude who had friends and went on dates, but I'm a natural introvert, so I cherished the rare alone time that I got. This weekend, I was looking forward to engaging in my normal empty house routine. Play some PlayStation on the big screen TV, obviously. Then order a late takeout dinner, pizza or Chinese, and pig out while watching some Dragon Ball Z. Then around 2 a.m., fall asleep on the couch with my good old dog, Cecil. Cecil was a beagle, which I kind of love that. Sorry, that was me saying that. I love that. He was as old as the hills and had been in our family for almost 8 years. He was quiet and peaceful and spent his time begging for food and sleeping. Unlike most beagles, Cecil never howled or barked. He was more than content to rest his head on your lap and spend the night there. Anyway, back to the story. It's approximately 1 a.m., and I had just finished the last slice of pizza and was dozing off on the couch when I hear a bang coming from the back alleyway. I didn't think much of it. Anyone who has lived in a city knows noises happen at all moments of the night. Cecil's head popped up off my lap and the hairs on his back stood up. He was always a bit skittish, so I calmed him down and started dozing off again. Not more than 2 minutes later, I hear another bang, and Cecil did something I've never seen him do before. He leapt off the couch and ran like the wind toward the door leading to the basement, barking and growling like a dog twice his size. The look on his face reminded me of a German Shepherd canine unit. I'd never seen him like that before, which got my adrenaline pumping. Through the dog's barking, I can now make out a persistent banging. There was a seldom used door in the basement that led to our back alleyway. It was old and rusted and was really hard to open even with a key, and it made a lot of noise. I suddenly realized that someone was trying to break into my house through my basement door. Quick little bit of context for anyone who hasn't lived in a bad neighborhood. If someone tries to get into your house and moves on after they realize the door is locked, they want your stuff. If someone is persistently trying to get into your house despite the door being locked, well, they want you. Knowing this, I rush upstairs to grab the heavy wood baseball bat that I keep under my bed for situations like this. Then I head down to my basement. He is so much braver than I am. I probably should have ran, but I was a macho teenager with a tough guy complex, and plus I had nowhere else to go. While I'm heading down the stairs to my basement, Cecil blows past me with the speed and aggression of a dog half his age. Suddenly, I hear a man's voice say, "Oh, F," and the banging stopped. I didn't call the cops or anyone else, which was probably the dumbest thing I have ever done. I just sat up for the rest of the night with a bat in my hand. My brother came home that morning and I told him what happened. We went to the basement door to take a look, and when we gave it a tug to open it, the whole door fell off. This psycho was one good shove away from getting into my house. But old Cecil scared him off. I'm pretty sure that lazy fat dog saved my life. Well, when I tell this story to people, they dismiss his actions as a dog doing what a dog was supposed to do. But when I tell you that Cecil never barked or moved that fast in his entire life, you can take that to the bank. It was almost like he knew the urgency. He knew that door was about to give. A few years back, we had to have him put down because he just had no will to live anymore. Before the injection, I got a moment alone with him. I thanked him one last time for his friendship and for what he did that night. At that point, I was a grown man with a wife and kids. I'm convinced none of that would have happened without old Cecil. Man, this one's gonna make me choke up. Thanks, pal. I miss you. Oh, the end of that one. Dog stories always get me so bad. That was such a sweet one that definitely could have gone so differently. I have a pit bull. He's a little mix. He's smaller than your normal pit bulls, so they call him a pocket pit, but he's more of a Staffordshire. And he may look menacing to the outside person. I thought he was laying in here actually, but he's not. He's such a wuss. He is just a little baby, honestly. The bark he's got down. If you are the mailman, you should be scared. Stories like this always just remind me that pets can always sense things, They just, I don't know, it's they can hear, they hear so much better than we do. And so I tend to trust animals when they're acting on their instincts, just because they know. Now, sometimes, like I said, my dog just hates any mailman. There have been other times where I'm you know what, I'm going to trust you on that one, bud. That was our first story. The person who wrote the next story, I have several of his stories, not just in this episode, but in future episodes as well, because he's written a lot over the years and they're all really great. The user is Fourth Degree Night. The sub is Ghost Stories, so a little bit different vibes. This one was posted 7 months ago. The original post title is named The Time I Stayed a Few Nights in an Empty House. Are we ready? Back around 1991, my then girlfriend and her family moved out of state. They had packed up their entire house and put it on the market. This was during the recession, and her dad got a really great offer out of state that he couldn't refuse. They lived on the other side of town from me, in the older area of town, but it was still nice. The homes were huge and kind of ranch style with huge lots. Their home was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house with a detached garage, huge driveway that fit their boat and RV, and they were not really that close to neighbors, meaning that the plots of homes were not spaced too close together. I remember the house had one huge tree out front that covered most of the front driveway and over to the garage. The backyard had 2 or 3 smaller trees. I remember one of them was a fruit tree, maybe oranges. I can picture this house. It's beautiful. When they packed up everything, I was helping them pack their home, and when I was doing so, her dad pulled me aside to the porch with her mom. Her dad had asked me if he could trust me with something. I knew her parents loved me and trusted me, so I wasn't sure what they wanted, but I would have done anything for them. They said until the realtor sells the house, if I wouldn't mind stopping in every few days and check on the place. Her dad hands me the key and says if you can maybe help us with the cleaning the place up too. He started to give me some cash, and I told him no, that I would be happy to do it for him. I knew they were going through a tough spot, so I told him not to worry about anything and that I would clean and make sure everything is okay. He seemed really worried about leaving the house alone. He said if you could maybe stay a night or two just so people don't think the house is abandoned. He said that the guy across the street is on vacation and he was the only other neighbor that he could trust. During that time, there were issues of people breaking into foreclosed homes and removing appliances and squatting. I told him for sure that I would plan on spending a few nights there a week or whatever. He said call if you needed anything, but that it would take them a few days of travel to get to their new place. Her dad had a cell phone, but back then it wasn't like today. But he gave me my girlfriend's grandmother's phone number and said she would know how to get in touch with him. The first few days, I did as they asked. I cleaned up the kitchen, bathrooms, vacuumed everything. And then I started doing other chores like windows, wiping down walls, and stuff like that. The first night, I stayed the entire night. I told my parents that I was going to work all night. It was like on a Friday, and I had planned to come back home the following morning. There was a cot, a radio, and a few lights, but nothing else. I decided to sleep in my girlfriend's old room. Part of me just missed her at that point, and I didn't know how long it was going to be until I saw her again. I fell asleep with the radio playing low in the room, and I had left a couple of lights on in the kitchen and the front bathroom light on, if I remember correctly. During the first night, I woke up in the middle of the night freezing cold. It was fall, and temperatures could dip down at night, but this felt like something else. It felt like a cold from some kind of source, like being out in a fridge. I got up and turned on the house heater and went back to the cot and bundled up with my sleeping bag. When I got home the next night, I mentioned to my friend about how cold it got the night before, but apparently it wasn't a cold night. Over the following days, I would stop by the house during the day, check on the house. I would take the time to finish up my homework and then go home. I think the next time I slept over, it was a Thursday night. I remember because I had school the next day and planned out how I was going to get to school from their house, as they lived further from my school than I did. I got to their house later in the evening. It was almost dark. This time, I brought a little camping TV that was black and white and had bunny ears. We're going to pause for a second because I don't know my listening demographic, but bunny ears, on the old TVs, if you're not, old enough to remember this, it was like you would have the TV and then you would a lot of times have an antenna on it. So it was like a little round thing that had 2 like metal wires almost sticking out of the top and that was to get the signal. And if you were a kid back in the day, you would have to be the one to go and adjust the antennas, and your parent or grandparent or whoever would be like, no, it's not clear yet, it's not clear. And you'd have to find it like in a perfect spot to where the like TV, the picture is clear. It's good times. Now we don't have that. Now it's just like it'll freeze and buffer. But back in the day, that's what bunny ears were. Sorry, I just felt like I needed to explain that. All right, so this time I brought a little camping TV that was black and white and had bunny ears just so I could have a little entertainment. However, the TV didn't want to get a signal, in my girlfriend's old room, so I moved to their den. Their den was like an add-on. It must have been a patio at some point or something because you could tell it wasn't part of the original house. I set up my cot, brought a thermos of hot chocolate, turned on my TV and was watching TV and started to fall asleep. I heard a noise come from the other side of the house. It sounded like, sorry, I'm trying to fix my chair. All right. It sounded like if you lean a broom handle against the wall and it falls over but slides down the wall. That is what it sounded like. I get up to check on what made the noise. I didn't see anything, and the broom and mop were in the kitchen pantry, and they were still upright. I then went to the bathroom to go to the bathroom, and I swear I heard someone whispering, like saying a full sentence. I remembered what her dad said about watching out for people trying to break in and steal stuff. So I ran around the house, turning on all the lights. A lot of the rooms didn't have ceiling lights, so I turned on what I could. I turned on the backyard lights, the porch lights, checked all the doors, everything was locked, and nothing was open. I go back to the den, and my little TV is off, but I know I left it on. I started getting the creeps. I can honestly say I didn't sleep all that night. Just a little side note, he likes a lot of run-on sentences. I am honestly getting out of breath trying to say his complete sentence because they're very long, so I apologize. The next day at school, I told a couple of friends about it, and they wanted to come over, but I told them that her dad had asked me not to have people over or throw a party or anything, not that I would have. I was split between asking a friend to join me or keeping my word. I decided to keep my word. The next few days, I only checked in on the house, and that Sunday, my girlfriend called me at home. She asked me how I was doing. She was talking about their road trip to their new house. I was kind of quiet or something because I remember her asking me, okay, what's wrong? Other than me telling her that I missed her. I didn't want to seem like I was some scared kid of being in a house all alone. I told her to let her dad know that I stayed over a few times and went to check on the house almost every day. I think I also reminded them to cancel their paper because it was still coming. She then says, are there any issues being alone there? I said, what do you mean? She said, nothing is bothering you. I told her, well, I got a really cold spell in her room and that I had heard noises and I swear I heard whispering. She said, yeah, I kind of figured you would find out. Come again. I said, Kathy, what are you talking about? She said, well, remember how I told you I never liked to be home alone? I said, yeah. Sometimes she would call me over when her parents were not home so that she wasn't home alone. I said, is your house haunted or something? She just said, well, I'm not sure it's haunted or something is just there, but yeah, we would hear noises and see things. She went on to tell me stories about how when she was a kid and they moved in there, that she would run into her parents' room and sleep at the edge of their bed. I was like, oh, okay, great, thanks for telling me. She said I didn't want you to think I was weird. She said, oh, my dad said you don't have to stay the night there anymore. The neighbor across the street is back from vacation and he'll keep an eye on the place at night. However, he still asked if I wouldn't mind going at least every other day. I kept that up for a few days, making sure to hit the house only during daylight. As the weeks went on, the days got shorter, and one evening I arrived at the house around 7. It was already dark outside. I opened the front door, turned on some lights, and went to use the restroom. And as I was going to the bathroom, I was facing the toilet. And they had one of those bathrooms with a mirror that went across the whole wall. And I could see into the hallway from the bathroom. I saw something go by really fast. I yelled out, "Hello?" I left the house in a hurry. I left the bathroom light and the hall light on. A day later, Kathy's dad asked if I left a light on because the neighbors saw that the lights were on and saw me inside. I said, "Yeah, I stopped by around 7, checked on everything and left." He said, "No, this was at 11. And I said, "No, it wasn't me." I went there a few more times. Then the realtor took over and sold the house to a company that bought up homes. I was so glad to not have to go back anymore. That one is like just one of those, kind of like my house, honestly. Like you kind of, maybe you saw a little something, maybe, I don't know. But we've never had any whispers or any creepy things like that. So I don't love it. And I'm the type of person with a very large imagination. I can easily make up things that I think I hear, or, I think I accidentally saw something. So I would be terrified. Especially as like a teenager, and in the 90s. So he didn't have a cell phone. I know her dad did, but it was not common for kids to have cell phones until like the 2000s. Next story. This, I could not find the user because they deleted their account. And this was 6 years ago. So I don't know if they just wrote this story and immediately deleted it, or if they were on Reddit a long time and then, after 6 years, they got tired of it. So I don't know. The title is Not My Mother. So this story happened about 11 years ago. I was a senior in high school at the time, but this is the single most mind-boggling thing I have ever experienced. It's also important to note that it happened in mid-December. I'm from Iowa, and the winters here get very cold at night. Like, if you get stuck outside, you will die kind of cold. That plus the snowfall makes everything dead silent. You can hear anything and everything inside the house and immediately outside of it. Well, me and my best friend were hanging out in my family's walk-around basement, just having a boring winter night playing video games. We were also the only ones home. The reason it was just us is because my mother went from work straight to a bar to grab a few drinks with coworkers. So me and my friend thought it would be a good idea to break into the family wine and live a little. Why not? As we were sitting there, opening up the first bottle, I hear the door to the garage open and slam shut. I immediately go, "Oh crap," and start looking for places to hide the bottle. My friend says, "I thought you said your mom was supposed to be out all night." "She was," I replied. I then heard a few heavy stomps and hear my mother yell out, "Meows and boo? Anyone home?" What? I yell back up the stairs, "Yup, just hanging out in the basement." I hear a few more steps move from the garage door toward the stairs, and she yells out again, "Can you come help me with something? I need you up here." I reply back while frantically trying to find a place to hide the wine bottle. "Yup, give me just a minute." Then there was silence for about 20 seconds. "Anyone down there with you?" she yelled back in a more concerned, serious tone, in a voice that was slightly off of my mother's. This was the first thing that told me that something wasn't right. Our family never cared if people were over, as our house was very open house to all of our family and friends. And the voice, it was just wrong. Like, it sounded like my mother's, but it was missing something that I couldn't put my finger on. Weirded out, I replied, Just Colton." After I yelled that back to her, I found a good place to hide the wine bottle and began walking up the steps to the next level. Now, as I was walking up the steps, I couldn't help but feel the overbearing silence in the house and the slight electric twinge that something wasn't right. When I got to the top of the steps, I looked over to where the door to the garage is and also the kitchen right next to it. And it is pitch black as all the lights were off. And there was no moonlight shining through any of the windows. I walked over to the kitchen yelling out, "Mom, where are you?" There was no reply. Just silence and darkness. I feel the electric twinge turn into full needles, and my adrenaline is kicking in full force. I have to get out of here as fast as possible. My mother was not home. I run back down the stairs, grabbing my coat along the way. "What's wrong?" Colton says. "My mom's not home," I reply as fast as I can, looking for my truck keys. "What do you mean? You were just talking with her." I could see the confusion in his face. "There's no one home. We need to leave right now." I took a few steps toward the back door that opens up to the yard, and then I see my dog shaking on the couch and my cat growling behind it. Ooh. I couldn't leave them. I just knew that if we left, something would happen. "Are we leaving?" Colton said, still confused as hell. "No, I can't leave them here alone. Something is really off. I'm going to call my mom and figure this out." I pull out my phone and call my mom. She picks up immediately. "Meowsaboo?" I don't know what that is. That's just what she calls it. "What's going on?" she answered. "Mom, were you just home? I heard you yelling for me from the second level, and when I went up there, you weren't there," I said frantically, hoping that she was playing a joke. "No, I'm just leaving the bar. I wasn't feeling very well. Are you okay?" "What do you mean you heard from me?" I fill her in on the whole story, and she rushes home. Colton and I stayed in the basement with the animals until she got home, but before she did, you could hear something upstairs. Not walking or sitting on things, but a pressure in the air, like a black hole, was slowly moving from one room to the next. And the word that I would instinctively describe it was hungry. When she got home, you could feel the thing leave just as quickly as it came. Like an overbearing predatory presence had just flown away. We still have never figured out what the hell was going on, and this is just one story of many unexplained things that have happened to us. But this one is the easiest to write down and the one that I was happy to have a witness for. My mother has passed now, and I've moved away to Arizona, but whenever I go back to Iowa and I see Colton, he still gets creeped out by what had happened. I will never truly know what happened, but I know that whatever it was that had my mother's voice, it was evil and it was hungry. I don't like that story. I don't like that feeling. I don't want to know what it was. Oh, no. And I love that the writer, he's a great writer, but the fact that he used the word hungry really stresses me out and raises my blood pressure quite a lot. Because it's just like, you can just, no. I don't need any hungry things in my house besides my little family here. Nothing else, please. I don't like that at all. So, anyway, I would ask if you've had anything like that in your own homes. And I hope that the answer is no, because it's terrifying and I don't love it at all. So, moving on. This one goes back to the 4th degree knight, who I shared one of his stories earlier. He has posted a lot over the years, and I don't know his age, but like if he was talking about being a teenager in the early 90s, I'm assuming he's, mid 40s, 50s. So he's had a lot of life experiences, and he has posted about a lot of them. This one is in the Scary Stories subreddit, and the original post was 2 years ago. He does say that this is a short story that was based on a bunch of true events that happened in his life, and he just kind of molded them all together. Take that for what you will. And the post is called "Body Trapped in the Wall of Our New House." Yay! Love it so much already. After saving up for many years, my wife Millie and I finally were able to afford our first home. Thanks mostly in part to Millie's great uncle, who, when he passed, left his estate to several family members. Millie's great uncle, I must admit, had the opportunity to meet him, and when he passed, he did not have a wife or children, so he left his estate to be sold and divided up among several family members, including Millie. Millie and I had saved up over $100,000, including her inheritance, and started looking at homes. Unfortunately, in our area, homes still seemed to be way out of reach. We were unable to get pre-qualified on a home loan for $450,000, which helped when putting offers on our home. I think it's funny how, technical he is, but okay. For months, it seemed like nothing was in our reach. We would put in an offer, and almost immediately someone would bid higher than us and higher than what we could afford. So our realtor was such a trooper. He would contact us immediately if a home went on the market, so we would be the first bid. However, after the first 2 months of shopping, we decided to let our hopes diminish. One evening, we got a call from our realtor, and he was kind of hesitant about giving us the details of this house. Other times, he would say things like, "You're just going to love the size of the kitchen, the granite countertops, hardwood floors, bonus room, or new roof." Trying to sell us on the house so we could put in a bid. This time, he's slow about giving the details for this house. 4 bedrooms, 2 bath, 2-car garage, split-level home. When pressed, he offered more details, but not at all like he was trying to sell it to us. Yes, it had a fireplace, central heating, and AC. He said, "I want you to come look at the house and maybe have an inspector look at it before you bid." He said that the house had sat vacant for years and really needed a lot of upgrading. What he didn't know was that Millie and I had resigned ourselves to the fact that buying a fixer-upper was more in our future than a move-in, ready, and updated house. Millie said, "We will have many, many years to fix it up room by room." We made an appointment to view the house the following Saturday morning. That morning, we both woke up with such excitement, and we thought today is going to be our day. When we arrived at the address, we were a little disappointed to see several other cars of homebuyers there with their realtors. However, we marched in and started looking around the house. We noticed the other young couples and one older couple. Well, they weren't very impressed with the house. I'd heard one lady tell her husband, "No, this place is a dump." The older couple just walked through, checking out each room, and then left. Pretty soon, Millie, our realtor, and I were the only ones left inside. I had brought a notepad and started making notes. The kitchen was straight out of the 70s, yellow appliances, dark brown cabinets, and a yellow sink. Wow, I can't even imagine a yellow sink. Where did I go? I just lost my place, sorry. The yellow sink really threw me off. The floor was that old linoleum flooring that looked like fake stone. The fridge was a pale green color. I looked at Millie and said that this is the room we are definitely starting in first. The rest of the house was pretty much as you would expect. Old wood paneling, green shag carpet that had been matted down over the years so that you could see each pathway and looked newer where the furniture once stood. The bathrooms were the same, a yellow and green decor, except for the master bathroom was a fancy pink and gold. As we move on to the downstairs area, this really got my attention. It reminded me of that Rat Pack era. You could tell that there was once a pool table in the center of this large den, a built-in bar area. Everything was dark wood and red leather bar stools, and the leather trim around the bar was red. Behind the bar was marbled-looking mirrors and glass shelves. I thought to myself, I like this room, but Millie had other ideas. I had made notes about the house, and we figured that the kitchen and the bathroom were going to be our biggest expense, and the rest of the house is just new paint and flooring. I don't know why he explains all this, but okay. The asking price for the house was $565,000. I told our realtor we should offer them $525,000 because the house needed at least $25,000 in upgrades. I knew our bid was going to get rejected, but what the hell, let's try it. Our realtor put in the offer. We took him to our favorite Mexican cantina for lunch and said our goodbyes. That night, Millie and I talked about all the upgrades the house would need. We were almost talking ourselves out of it, but without saying the words. We woke up the next morning and decided to go to church, so as we were getting ready, my cell phone rings. It was our realtor. He said, "Congratulations, they accepted your offer." A whirlwind of shock, excitement, and terror hit me all at once. Millie looked at me expecting to hear bad news. I hung up with our realtor, only saying, "Thank you for letting me know." And I turned to Millie and said, "Well, we just bought a house." We both looked at each other with the same emotions that I had just described. Moving day. The day we get the keys to the place was about 45 days after the phone call. Of course, we were not ready to move in. There was so much work. I had hired a guy that my old next-door neighbor recommended. He was hired to do the kitchen and bathrooms. I wanted to save money, so I did all the painting and put down the laminate flooring myself. There was something odd about the house that I noticed. This happened when I was doing a little diagram of the house and noticed what seemed to be a void. There was an area between the lower level and the upper level that seemed to be like a void. There was a wall that ran along the wall downstairs that connected that room to the rest of the house, and it just seemed odd. I had rented one of those renovation dumpsters that you can get from your trash company to fill it up with construction debris, and I was tossing sections of that old green carpet outside and met our first neighbor. He was an older gentleman named Joe. Joe had thought I worked for the homeowner and not the actual homeowner. I introduced myself and said I just bought the place. He looked surprised and said, "Oh, welcome to the neighborhood." He said, "Hey, why don't you take a break and come have a beer with me?" I agreed, as it sounded like a good idea. We walked over to his garage, and he had fixed up a little man cave, lots of neon signs and fishing decorations. He had a pretty large garage fridge, and it was just filled with drinks. He handed me a cold can of Coors, and we sat down. He said, "Did they ever tell you the story about that house?" I told him actually no. All we were told was that it sat empty for a few years and that the family eventually wanted to sell it. He said, "Well, yes, it sat empty for a few years, but before that, did you know what happened?" I said no, but I could tell that he was eager to get on with it. And so he told me something like the place was haunted or someone was murdered there. Oh, just that. However, in our state, it was mandatory that that kind of information was disclosed. He lowered himself down with both elbows on his knees like a coach getting ready to give a talk to his team. He said, "Well, it was a bit of a mystery for many years. There was a lot of talk and speculation about what happened." He said that the house used to be owned by a couple who the husband had just retired and both kids left the house to go to college or something. Anyway, one day he sees several police cars and the wife standing outside talking to them and smoking one cigarette after another. Apparently, her husband had just vanished. He left his wallet, car keys, everything behind. Not so much as taking a change of underwear with him. No one saw him leave, and there were no signs of a disturbance. The police checked around the house, they looked in the backyard, they checked with former co-workers, they checked with his friends and family members, heck, they even checked to see if there were any signs of him having a mistress. The whole town was papered with his missing posters. Months and months passed. He saw his wife slowly decline into madness. Her sister came to pick her up one day, and just before she got into the car, she broke down in front of the garage door, crying out for her husband. It was an interesting story and one I was going to have to Google later. But Joe eventually said that the wife never came back to the house. However, a gardener would show up every 2 weeks, and a few times the kids would come by. Pretty soon, it was only a gardener and no one else. He boasted, but us neighbors, we took it upon ourselves to look out for the house, mostly chasing off teenagers who would try to break in. Sorry, he keeps talking like the point of view is a little odd in here because he doesn't put any quotations, so it's a little hard. I thanked Joe for the beer, but reminded him of all the work needed. He said, "Well, if you need a borrowed tool, ask Tony across the street because I don't lend tools out." He winked and laughed. Oh, Joe, he's so funny. I almost immediately forgot about the story Joe told me as I went back into a world of flooring, paint, and baseboards. I'm sorry, pause. How on earth are you just going to hear a story about how a man disappeared and he used to live in your house and he just vanished off the face of the earth, and then you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to totally forget that ever happened. Like, what? I would immediately be going inside, telling my wife everything, like trying to figure out what happened to him. Anyway, it's okay. It's fine. Our master bedroom and master bathroom were the two first rooms of the whole house to be officially upgraded and ready. However, Millie insisted on not fully moving into the house until we had a working kitchen. So I started working on what I could inside and outside of the house. One Saturday morning, I was at the house alone. Millie had a cousin's baby shower to attend, and I didn't want to go, so I opted out to do some work on our downstairs den. That was the wall that seemed out of place and had a different color of wood paneling. So I decided to remove that section of wood paneling and just paint the wall instead. Maybe it would brighten up the downstairs and Millie would let me keep that room and get a pool table. I had noticed a small door that was kind of hidden in the paneling. No, I don't like small doors. I had no idea how to open it, and there was a small hole. Not a keyhole, just a hole that you could see something went in there at one time. So I grabbed my pry bar and forced the door open. To my surprise, it was a closet. I looked at the latch that had locked the door closed, and it looked like there used to be a string attached to it, but it was broken off. You know, like a string sometimes people have to open an exterior side gate. Inside the closet were some old records, a bowling ball, some bottles of Seagram's gin and Kessler whiskey, and an old coat hanging. I immediately started to remove the items and take them to the dumpster. I think that would be so cool. Why would you immediately start throwing them away? What? Sorry. I set the bowling ball aside. Maybe I'll use it to decorate the room later. I started removing the paneling inside the closet and noticed another door. This time there was a string there. I'm sorry. So you find a small door after you rip the paneling off of a wall. And then you go, there's like a little closet. So you clean everything out of the closet, and then there's another door. This is Narnia. He's going into Narnia. We found the husband because he now lives in Narnia. You just got to go through the wardrobe. Stupidly, I left my cell phone upstairs. Go grab a flashlight, but the only one I could find is a small 2 AAA battery flashlight that I had gotten at a trade show. Why do we need to know? I went back in the closet and pulled the string to the second door inside the closet. As I open the door, I see the first door close on its own. Good. I step inside and turn on the light. It's a whole other little den. Shut up. Just as I am fully inside that door that I just came through, closed on its own. I use my flashlight to look back behind me, and I notice a spring closure attached to the door. I am stuck inside this room. I'm stressed. I use my little flashlight to look around. The room is pitch black, dark. It smells of musty, sweet mold mixed with wet newspaper. I spot a lamp on a little table and click it to turn on. Click, click, nothing. I continue to scan around the room and spot an old 19-inch TV on a metal TV cart. Holy crap. I click the TV on and a warm glow of static appears. Shut up. I cannot believe this. Thank goodness the TV works well enough to give me some light. I see over in the corner of the room another lamp. It was one of those huge glass lamps that everyone's grandma had back in the 70s. I walk over to it and click it, turns on. What is happening? Finally, I felt better. At least now I could see. As I turn around, I see a chair and someone sitting in it. Huh. Come again? I let out a scream that if any of my friends had heard, they would have never let me live it down. I screamed like a little schoolgirl and fell backwards, hitting a pile of magazines on the corner. I look over at the person sitting in the chair. He looks asleep. I bring the lamp a little closer to see that the skin is almost black, leather-like, and looked like one of those mummies I saw many years ago at a traveling ancient Egypt exhibit. Oh, okay. Was this the missing homeowner that crazy neighbor Joe mentioned? I looked around the room and found an old crochet afghan and cover him up. Well, that's nice. At least now he's warm. I thought to myself, great, I'm stuck in the room with the dead guy. I don't have a cell phone and no one knows that I'm locked in here. I tried my best to calm myself and try to think, what time is it? What time will Millie come back to the house? Maybe she'll stop at our apartment first to change and then come and meet me. Surely she's blowing up my cell phone. Then another thought chilled my heart. My cell phone was on one bar when I last looked at it. I'd forgotten to plug it in to charge. Oh well, it wouldn't do me any use anyway. I was locked in here with the dead guy and it could have been miles away. I look around the room thinking of different options. One thing that I thought about was how old was that light bulb in the working lamp? How long will it last? I began to look around the room and look for anything I could use to help me get out of there. I thought if only I had taken my crowbar with me into that room, but it was just on the other side of the second door. The room was long and narrow, but widens at the point where the dead guy was. He had made himself what seemed to be a little hideaway. Did his wife know about this room? Did she lock him in on purpose? Did she know he was here all this time and went mad knowing his corpse was in here? I hope he came down here to get away and died of natural causes. Why is that better, though? I don't even know. I feel like there's no good option, honestly. As I look around the room, there was a chair, his little TV on a TV stand, a small coffee table, and a bunch of coins on it. Off to the side was an army green filing cabinet, a stack of old National Geographics, and TV Guide magazines. I looked down the other end of the room and spot one of those old film projectors. I know those also have a light, so I set it up, plugged it in, ready just in case my lamp or TV stopped giving out light. I continued to look around the room for a screwdriver, a metal rod, hammer, or some kind of tool that I could use to get that door open. The metal filing cabinet's drawers were locked. The cabinet itself felt heavy. I pulled, banged, and kicked the cabinet, but it was solid. I tossed it over and over again until finally one of the drawers gave way. I opened it up and it was just full of the guy's coin collection. Mostly old coffee tins filled with old pennies. That's so cool. I walked over to the door and noticed that this door, unlike the outer door, was much heavier. The outer door was a solid core slab door, like a kind a builder would use for an exterior door. But the inner door, the door to this room, was much more than that. It felt like he had made this door from 4x4 lumber and sheet metal. What? Maybe he built this room as a bomb shelter, or before safe rooms were a thing. Maybe that was the purpose, or maybe he just wanted a safe place to keep his pennies. Unknown to me, yes, Millie was blowing up my phone, almost from the moment I stepped into the room. At first she thought I was just working and had the music blaring, but even as evening approached, she started to worry a little bit. She came by the house a little after 9 p.m. and saw my car in the driveway. She thought it was odd as no lights were on inside the house. The front door was closed but not locked. She reassured herself by saying maybe one of my friends came by and said, "Hey, let's go fishing." I have done that before. You only need to say the F word and I was out with my tackle box and pole in hand. I was like, why are we saying the F word? It's fishing. That's the word he's talking about. She looked around the house, called my name out a few times, and thought, well, he's not here. She didn't notice that my keys were still there and that my cell phone was upstairs on the counter. By this time, it was surely dead. She went back to the apartment, expecting to hear from me at any moment. By the time 11 o'clock came, she was in a full panic. I would be so stressed. She had called my best friend Craig, my other friends Mike and David, and none of them had talked to me that day. She called my coworkers, she called my family. No one had seen or heard from me. She thought about calling the police, but in her mind, seeing those TV shows where they say an adult has to be missing for 48 hours before they will do a report stopped her. Side note, don't ever let that stop you. You can totally call them. Okay? Better safe than sorry. She did not sleep at all that night. Oh my word. He stayed there all night. She stayed by her phone, Googling for accidents near our home, but couldn't find anything. Why would she not go back to the house? She didn't search the house. She just was like, okay, he's not here. And then she left. But then she's calling the cop. Okay, all right, okay. Sunday, the following day. The next morning, she went back to the house. Finally, thank you. It was about 7 a.m. She looked around the house looking for any sign that I returned. She went out the backyard calling my name. She did walk downstairs, looked around, and came back up. I must not have heard her, as in my little dungeon, I couldn't hear any noise. She went out to her car and sat in there crying. I feel so bad for this girl. I, on the other hand, felt like I was in an unending vigil. I did my best not to look over at the corpse on the chair. Over the night, I had no sense of time, so I was up all night. I began to pull down the old wood paneling around the room. This paneling was different. The other paneling inside the house was nailed on. This was glued on with some kind of adhesive. I soon realized why. As I pulled a section of it off, I noticed that the walls behind it were all cinder block. Dang. Great, I thought. I am trapped in a bomb shelter, and no one knows where I am or even if they can hear me. The fact that there were no windows that allowed light or fresh air made the feeling more claustrophobic, and soon my focus went to that and not so much at the dead guy in the chair. I soon tried to calm myself by sitting behind the now mangled filing cabinet. I was hiding my eyes from the corpse. I soon drifted off to sleep. Whew. Up above and outside, my wife decided to make a police report. She contacted our local police department. She didn't call 911 because she thought she would just start with a police report. She got on the line with dispatch and they asked her a ton of questions, such as my full name, if I was on any medication, the make and model of my car, license plate. She did snap at them saying his car is right in front of me and he's nowhere around. They gotta ask. The police dispatch said that an officer would be there as soon as they were free. She waited about 30 minutes and a patrol car pulled up. My wife is in tears and her voice cracked that I was missing. They asked her a bunch of routine questions and asked about my mental health and physical health and if I had any history of leaving before. She said my husband is not a runaway. The officer came and looked around the house a bit. They were the ones to find my cell phone and took it. I must not have heard them, as probably about that time I was asleep behind my green filing cabinet. The police did look around the exterior of the property, gave Millie a report number, and drove off. Oh, this is so stressful. At that time, our neighbor Joe and his wife walked over. They looked like they'd seen ghosts. Joe said to Millie, "Your husband, is he okay?" She looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "No, he's missing." Joe's wife grabbed his arm and looked at him. Millie looks at them and said, "Do you know anything? Please, if you do, please tell me." Joe starts to ask her, "Did your husband tell you the story that I told him about your house?" Millie said, "No, what story?" Joe looked at his wife and said, Why don't we go over to our house and we'll make a cup of tea?" Millie said, "I'm waiting for my mom and sisters to come." Joe said we can sit in our garage and watch out for them, so Millie agreed. They walk over and Joe's wife goes inside her kitchen to make a pot of tea. Joe pulls out a chair for Millie and tells her, "Now, what I'm about to tell you happened so long ago." He relays the same story he told me. Just as he's about to finish, Joe's wife comes out with the tea and sets it down. "Oh, Joe, don't get her up all in a panic about that. For all we know, her husband is just out getting materials or something." Really? Really, Joe's wife? His car is right there in his driveway. It's been 24 hours. Where did he go? What kind of materials could he be getting at 2 o'clock in the morning? Like, now it's daytime. He would have been back. What? Come on. Millie looks up and says, ever since we've been married, we have only been apart all night when he was on a business trip. He always comes home. Joe looked over the house and in a low voice just says, so odd, so odd. Millie's mother and sister come shortly afterward and pick her up. Her sister drives Millie's car back to her mom's and says, we'll call the police back when we get to the house. Millie's mom's house starts to be flooded with family members. Holy crap. Friends and people from church offering to go out and search for me. Later that night, Millie's mom gives her an over-the-counter sleeping pill and she sleeps in her mom's bed. This is like, he's been in there for a day and a half now. This is insane. I suddenly awoke, almost startled for some reason. I felt like the corpse had awoken me somehow. However, I woke up to my nightmare. I had no idea what time it was. I started ripping wall panels off again and tried not to think about my increasing thirst. The more paneling I peeled off, most of it coming off in very small sections, only revealed more cinder blocks behind it. Suddenly, I hear footsteps above, and not just one or two, but it sounds like 4 or 5 guys. Could it be the police? I start to yell out, I'm here! I'm in here! Suddenly, I hear a loud radio playing and soon realize that it's the workers, and they were known to blast Spanish music all during their workday. Oh, this is so stressful. I continue to yell out, pounding my fists on the walls, I'm in here! I'm trapped in the closet! Over and over again. My delirium soon got the best of me, and I fell on the ground laughing at I'm trapped in the closet. Hold on. I started laughing like I'm R. Kelly. My laugh soon starts to go to tears. Oh, man. At least you can find humor in it, right? I mean, if you're stuck in there with the dead body, what else you got to do? Millie is staying at her mom's, and no one notified the crews about what had happened. They were in the middle of ripping out the last bit of flooring and cabinets in the kitchen and replacing a section of drywall over where our sink was going to go. All that day, Millie and her mom drove around to different spots that in her mind I might be. She imagined that I went on a hike. Yeah, I am not the hiking type of guy, but she had to keep looking. Soon, evening fell, and they were back at Millie's mom's house, still surrounded by family and friends who were also out looking for me. One of them made up a missing poster. Of course, they used a picture of me that I hated, and I looked like I had a double chin. I love that's what he's concerned about. Like, you couldn't even use a good picture. Come on, guys. That evening, the crews were wrapping up for the day. I heard the music go off, and I suddenly jumped up and grabbed a reel from the projector and was hitting it on the ceiling, screaming with all my energy that I had left. Suddenly, I hear a knock back. I yell out, yes, I'm in here. Help me. I tried my best to remember what the word help was in Spanish, but I couldn't. Eventually, I had heard them yell from the other side of the wall. I screamed out, help me, I'm trapped. Then I hear footsteps run away. Oh man, did I scare them off. I can't last another night in here. I looked over at the corpse again. In my mind, he's smiling at me and laughing at me. Okay. Suddenly, I hear footsteps running back and a loud saw. Yes, I thought, finally, I'm going to be saved. I hear tearing, and the saw goes off for a few minutes, and I yell out again, keep going, I'm in here. Finally, a plume of sawdust begins to pour out of the wall. About 4 feet from the door that trapped me inside, they cut a hole about 2 by 2, and the worker pokes his head inside and said, what you doing in here, mister? What? Sorry, that killed me. Like, hey. I almost pushed him out of the way, trying to crawl out, and he said I can cut it bigger, and I said, no, I'm getting out of here. I scrape up all along my ribs and stomach, but I'm finally free. The other workers are all looking at me like, what the F is he doing? One offers me a Gatorade, and I gulp it down in one drink. I ask them if I can use their phone so I can call my wife. The phone rings 3 times, and Millie answers it. Honey, is that you? I cry out and said, yes, it's me. She said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at the house." She hangs up. Soon, Millie, the police, the paramedics, fire department, and almost all of our friends and family are all up and down my street. I started to throw up from trying to drink all the bottles of Gatorade the workers had. I get put on a gurney and they start an IV on me for dehydration. I tell the police officer who comes to check on me. I motion for him to come close, as I could barely speak anymore. I told him that there is a dead body in that room. After I'm released from the hospital, we decide to move from our apartment and we move in with Millie's mom. We did end up finishing the renovation on that home, but we never moved in. In the end, it was just too creepy for us, especially for me. I can't even imagine like the PTSD that he would have. Like he couldn't even go down in the basement anymore. We put the house on the market and had to disclose about the death that occurred. We thought we would lose money on that house, but in the end, an investor bought it and turned it into a rental, and we actually made almost $75,000 in profit. We did locate a family member and return the coin collection to the family. In the end, they also finally got the closure of their missing loved one. The end. Okay, I need to decompress. I'm wanting to know what my Apple Watch is saying right now because the stress that story gave me, I feel like I was just on a roller coaster. And what's crazy is he was like, this story is from true events. He turned it into kind of like a narrated story, but he was like, this is from my life. So I don't know which parts he made up, if he just changed the names or what, but but holy crap. That was a wild ride. That was a wild, wild ride. But a great story. That one really just rocked my world. And I know that was a very long one, but he just gives so much detail in all of his stories. It was just too good not to read. So I'm glad that we kept that one in there. I have one more story tonight, and it's from our 4th degree night again. This one is True Scary Stories, is the subreddit for it, and this one was posted 4 years ago. But like I said, this is from the same guy, so almost all these stories tonight were from him, but he's a great storyteller. Let's go. This one is called Being Left Alone at a House in the Middle of the Mojave Desert. Back around 1992 was the year I was born. I was in high school, and I was a sophomore, and unlike most of my friends in school, I didn't work the typical high school jobs, like McDonald's, Taco Bell, retail jobs in the mall, or work the local grocery store. I was very good with my hands and worked jobs like construction, demolition, flooring, and auto mechanics. All my contacts I worked for under the table as I started working on some of these jobs at 14. It was beneficial for both of us as I was only called in when needed, and I was the guy willing to only work evenings and weekends. Sorry, he doesn't like to use enough punctuation, so some of these are kind of hard to read. One of my contacts worked doing remodeling projects, like at restaurants, bars, retail shops, and typical commercial projects that we could only work after hours. Like I said, that worked out for both of us because I went to school and would sometimes work after school or weekends. For this one, it wasn't uncommon for him to leave me alone at a site and have a list of things for me to do alone, mostly demolition work. I did this while the other crew was doing the installation or remodel. I was the kid, but had the respect because I did what I was supposed to do and did the work of a man without complaints. I got paid good, and in one night I can make more than my friends did working all week at McDonald's. That is so frustrating. I wish I could work construction. This one instance, I got a call from the guy I worked for, and he said he had a project for me, and if I could work the following Saturday. I said sure. He said to bring food and lots to drink, as there was nothing nearby. I used to have a small cooler and would fill it with drinks, like Cokes or Gatorade or whatever, plus chips and a couple of sandwiches. Back then, I could eat a whole pizza by myself and burn it off. Lucky you. He picked me up that Saturday morning as I didn't have a car or a license yet, so he would pick me up and drive me to the sites for work and then leave me alone there. I rarely worked with his other crews as they were more skilled labor guys. I was just the tear-out kid. Here's the part that was my major downfall to this story. I didn't pay attention to where we were going. I was too busy talking to him and I think we were talking about cars. You see, at the time, my goal was to save up enough money to buy an old muscle car and rebuild it. It took a long time to arrive to the site. As we drove up, it was in the middle of nowhere. Now, you may not think California has places like this. Duh. But back in the early 90s, out in the Mojave Desert, yes, it was big plots of land and homes more than a few city blocks apart. I knew we left the highway and went down a few other 2-lane highways for a long distance. I remember he asked me about my drinks, and he pulled out a brand new jug of water that he had in his truck that looked like it had been there a while, and told me to take it with me just in case. He said that the water to the house would be not working. As we pulled up to the property, he's in a hurry to drop off tools and to get to another work site. So I hurry up and help him with things like breaker bars, shovels, pry bar, hammer, broom, several big trash bins, and a small tool bag that I often had with me. He tells me that he will be back to pick me up at about 5 or 6 as there's no electricity to the site, and it should only take me until then to do what I needed to do. That was always his way of saying, I'm not only paying you till this time, so you better get everything done by then. It was never too outrageous, and we always had a good understanding on time and tasks. He drove away, and I am now at this property all alone. I walk into the house, and it's mostly empty. My job was to remove all remaining furniture, contents, and appliances. Remove all the flooring, gut the kitchen and bathrooms, and remove all of the wood paneling. This project was going to be like what we now call a flip. They were going to fix it up and sell it. Almost immediately, I get kind of spooked by the place. It was very odd. Now, mind you, I'm used to being on sites alone, working all night. This was the daytime on a Saturday and bright outside. However, the house was old, dark, musty, and kind of cool inside. The kind of cool that gives you goosebumps. To add to the spook factor, let me describe what I remember about the house. Imagine walking back in time to the 1960s or earlier, dark green carpet that looked like matted down broccoli, pine wood everywhere that had a darker stain to it. The wood paneling wasn't the kind used in the 80s sheet paneling, but actual board paneling. Old window curtains that had all looked like someone's grandma made them. An avocado green sink, stovetop oven, and the stuff that was left behind like old furniture and a closet full of old stuffed animals looked to be about 30 years old. The style of this house was like an old western ranch, as there were wagon wheels inside and outside the house. Never seen a wagon wheel inside a house, but okay. I had an old battery-powered radio, but only could get a few stations, but was just happy for the noise. I started removing all the junk from the house, and as I normally did on a project, if there wasn't a dumpster on site, I made a trash pile. I tore up all the flooring next. To my delight, everything seemed to come up with ease, and it was rip, cut, and toss. I took a big demo hammer to the kitchen and tore it apart in less than an hour. I'm not going to lie, that sounds so cathartic, and I would totally have fun doing that. I ended up using the big jug of water that my boss had given me to wash my hands and face periodically, but by late noon, as most who know the desert, the dryness also starts to take the moisture from you, especially if you are working in it. So by late afternoon, I'm down to my last drink, and I'd almost eaten everything I bought. No worries, I thought, the guy should be here in a couple of hours to pick me up. As the time gets closer for them to arrive, I'm all done with my tasks. I even sweep the entire place, and it's now ready for the rehab crew to get to work, making this place look modern. The time of year I was out here wasn't a typical hot desert day, but you know in the desert, as soon as the sun goes down, it starts to cool rapidly. I had a flannel shirt, but that wasn't enough, and it was starting to get dark. This was the time before cell phones were common, and while there was no electricity, water, and phone service to the house. I climbed up to get on top of the roof of the house to get a better look to see if I could see something in the distance, and what looked like miles down, I saw a smaller road that the dirt road led to, and a few homes, but they were all in the dark. My first thought was to hike down to a neighbor's house and ask them to use the phone. The nearest house, no one was home, and this home also looked abandoned. I'm sorry, if someone told you that they were going to pick you up at a certain spot, do not leave that spot. Regardless of if they're late or not, do not leave. No, because how are you going to get back to that spot? It's dark. How are they going to find you? I don't understand. If you remember, the early 90s was the start of a decline of the economy and recession, so it wasn't uncommon for a lot of foreclosed homes and tract of homes. A lot of those I worked on at the time. I started to think about my options as darkness fast approached. One was to stay at the house until morning, to hike with what little water I had a few miles in the dark Mojave night. 3, wait it out until early morning and hike out of there to some sort of civilization. It also suddenly occurred to me that no one knew where I was except my boss. I didn't know if he told anyone else where I was, and certainly my family wouldn't miss me until maybe Sunday night, but I didn't even tell them I was going to work there. They knew me and how much I would work to save up for my car that they never worried about me not coming home. Okay. As full darkness was around me, it was amazing to look out at the night sky, and lucky for me, the moon was bright. I didn't have a flashlight or any way to make a fire. Even though I tried, I was going to make a small bonfire out of the broken up construction debris as the temperature started to fall, probably down to the low 40s. My only option was to go back inside the creepy house, and somehow it seemed even more creepy sitting alone in the dark. At about 8 p.m., the batteries on my radio, which was my only source of little light and noise, started to die. I grabbed an old wooden chair and sat in the living room of this house facing the door. I'm starting to hear wind and odd noises, which I assume are animals in the distance, and what sounds like leaves cracking under feet. I'm starting to shiver from the cold, so I set off trying to start a fire in the fireplace. Imagine like Tom Hanks in Castaway trying to start a fire. At least this is keeping my mind off of my situation. Sitting in the living room next to the fireplace, the house seems even darker than it should have. Mind you, in the daytime, the inside seemed dark, so with only the moonlight, I was pretty much sitting in complete darkness. My mind starts to play tricks on me, and I'm seeing shadows moving outside and inside the house. I'm also starting to hear someone talking, like whispers or something. I get up from my chair and yell out, "Hello?" And just as I do, I hear something fall from the other side of the house. I run over to the door and go outside again. At least in the moonlight, I can see better. But off in the distance, I hear noises and see movement, but I can't make anything out. I have my pile of tools by the edge of the house, ready for me when my boss picks me up. So I run over there and grab Big Daddy. It was my heavy pry bar that I used in demo. I was ready to defend myself for who or whatever was out there. I had to keep moving because my undershirt and flannel shirt weren't enough to keep me warm. The wind was also starting to pick up. For as far as I could see, there was no light around me. I didn't want to try to make it up on the house again, out of fear of falling in the dark, but I get up on top of the gate and just try to gain a little bit of altitude to see if I can see some house lights or nearby car lights. My mind went to the stories that circled around that at that time about how people would come up to the desert and bury bodies, how there were Satanist groups out here, and how people would go missing for no reason. Every noise had me on edge, and every shadow had my heart pounding. Now I knew no one was in that house, but I swear I would hear noises from inside. I was huddled up on the front porch, looking in the living room window, expecting to see someone at any moment. By around 11 p.m., I looked at my watch, thinking this was going to be a long night, as all this stuff only happens after it gets dark. I don't know how I'm going to make it another 6 hours till daybreak. I start thinking that the moment it gets to be daybreak, like the moment light starts to appear on the horizon, I'm going to take the little water I have left and walk east. I knew going east, I would eventually make it somewhere. The dirt road I was off of, I knew that the direction led to a paved road. He's got better direction sense than I do because I've been so screwed. Closer to midnight, I'm wide awake and my eyes are fixed on the dirt road, thinking that any time now a car would come down it and maybe they can call for help for me. I remember casually turning to look back into the house, as all this time I keep hearing noises, but telling myself it's maybe a rat or some kind of animal. Sorry, just read the next line. I see a shadow of a person move from the kitchen to down the hall. I jump up from sitting down and was like, that is not an animal, that's a human. I start backing my way off of the porch down toward the pile and trip over debris and fall down on the ground. I get up but fall again. It was like something is pushing me down, or my imagination, but all of a sudden these bright lights are coming closer to me as I'm laying on the ground. Well, bright lights are good. I jump up and it's my boss. He's looking at me like, what the heck are you doing? I was just so glad to see him. I wasn't mad or anything. I just asked what happened. He said that he was so sorry, but thought that the other crew was coming to get me, and they thought that he was coming. So no one actually came. He said it wasn't until later that evening that he asked the other crew leader about how far along I got, that he said that they didn't go get him. Well, it took him almost 2 hours from where they were working to come get me. He felt really bad and told me he was going to pay me for the entire time I was out there. He also grabbed a can of Coke from his cooler and asked me if I was thirsty, and I drank that all in one gulp. And once we got back to the civilization, he went through a fast food drive-thru and I ate like I'd never eaten before. As he was driving me home, I asked him about the house. I told him how creepy it was, and he said he didn't have any information on the house, only what we were supposed to do. After that, I made sure to always keep extra batteries, flashlights, and double the amount of liquid. The end. Okay, see, that one did not get me like the other one. Honestly, though, like, not that I ever go hiking, because I don't. Just the thought of, like, getting lost, like, hiking or camping or in the desert or anything, like the forest or anything like that, freaks me out, like, so bad. Like, it's one of my greatest fears is to, like, be completely lost in the desert or forest or something. So, and I would totally be the one to be like, I hear everything and everything is going to eat me. And I would not have handled it well. I also don't love how he saw a person in the house and then was just like, well, bye. I don't know. I don't love it, guys. I don't love it. What do we think? Which was the scariest story tonight? I am definitely going to go with the dead body in the house. I don't know. That's just me. The one about the kid's mom was also very freaky. If you weren't here for that one, it was like a kid and his friend were downstairs in the basement. He had a full-blown conversation with his mom, but he felt like she sounded off. And then when he went upstairs, she wasn't there. And, like, he called her and she was like, no, I'm not home. And it, like, really freaked him out. So yeah, that one was crazy too. But anyway, I hope that y'all enjoyed our stories tonight. If you want to catch the next broadcast that we have, make sure that you are following along and you're subscribed. Good night, guys. And just like that, we're going off the air. If you want to catch the next broadcast, make sure you're following and subscribed. There's always more waiting to come through. I'm Bri, and I'll see you next time on the Static Hour. Good night.